the computer. Good morning. It is April 18th of 2026, and I want to start off group today by announcing that while I was having my morning coffee, I had the news on and saw that the President of the United States was signing an executive order to accelerate access to psychedelic drugs, fast tracking what has been happening, all the research for over 50 years now, to be able to make psychedelics more accessible. And according to the FDA commissioner, specifically 5-HT2A serotonergic acting drugs, which includes psilocybin, ibogaine, LSD, DMT, and mescaline. So we are not talking about ketamine and we are not talking about MDMA. We are talking about nature and the psychedelics that impact the serotonin system. Those of us on group today already know the benefits because we've been living them. We've been seeing them for ourselves and with the people that we care about. I personally have worked with over 1,000 individuals at this point, specifically with microdosing psilocybin. And so to see this happen today was just incredibly exciting. And so what came to mind for me was, what a great day to be in the USA where you're free to grow your own thoughts. And so I just wanted to start group with that today and talk about, give each of you a chance to kind of reflect back to me and to the rest of the group, for those of you that are willing to share how microdosing psilocybin has been helpful to you. And, I'll touch on a few key areas of the brain real quick that get impacted by psilocybin, because what's so amazing is we're able to have conversations about how this is helpful. But what is the science behind it? That's what has kept us in the dark for so long. Science and research have been happening, but the general public and specifically the political system have not been open to discussing it because it was fearful. And the fear is due to how psilocybin and these serotonergic psychedelics work, and that is that they change the way the brain processes information. It quiets down the areas of our brain that are just completely in default mode of accepting whatever's handed to us and going with the flow to try and just mitigate conflict and everybody just be okay with how things are and not challenge anything. And it keeps us also in exciting the prefrontal cortex, able to think more clearly, get rid of brain fog, be more focused and creative and present, and not just walking around like zombies, which is what pharmaceuticals do to our brains, specifically psychotropic pharmaceuticals. Psilocybin reduces blood flow to the amygdala. So we're not in a state of hypervigilance and fight or flight and fear. And when you're not living from a place of fear, then you're living from a place of intentional choice and hope and anticipation and having more positive regard in your thoughts about the future. It also enhances neuroplasticity. And I think that's the biggest magical piece. If we're going to say, to use that term magical, neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to create new neural connections. And so when we talk about things like depression is the brain getting stuck in negative thought loops, and it just goes round and round and round in these thought loops and can't break out of it. And that's what keeps that depressive way of thinking. And with enhanced neuroplasticity, we're able to have brand new neural connections, new neural pathways. Psilocybin has been shown to strengthen the neural connections that are there. So even moving beyond some of these mental health benefits, there's really exciting research with dementia and Alzheimer's and brain individuals who have had brain injuries and strokes, because the neural system runs throughout our entire body. It's not just in our brain, but that's ultimately the control center for it. So to have this morning be started with our political system opening up access to more research, freer research, a reclassification that's being discussed by the FDA, potentially by the end of summer is what was quoted. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed for that. But a reclassification, so it's no longer a Schedule 1, down to a lower schedule. Marijuana just this past few months was reclassified down to a Schedule 3. Psilocybin is far less harmful than marijuana. And so, really hoping it'll be classified down to a Schedule 4 or even lower. So Exciting way to start conversation today. But I'd love to hear from those of you that are willing to share, just for the benefit of the group and anyone else who may be listening. How has psilocybin microdosing been helpful to you in the time that you've been doing it?
Go ahead and speak. I've recently started microdosing. It's a very new thing for me personally. But what I've noticed already that's been pretty dramatic, and the change has been I'm a lot calmer. I'm a lot calmer. And even with my day-to-day running of my checklist, I always refer to I have constant checklists. And about the time you knock off one or two or three, you're already panicked for the fourth and fifth and sixth that haven't been added on yet. But that's really been taken away, just almost completely. I'm calmer. I can breathe more. I can go about my day without as much stress. There's always some stress, right? But it's not like a panicky stress. It's not like an anxiety driven stress. Okay, I've got things that I got to get done. It's definitely not what it was pre microdosing. So that was a pretty big, significant change that I've noticed so far.
That's awesome. And just to clarify for other listeners too, that dose that you are finding helpful, you're still driving a car, going to work.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
100%. I'm doing everything, golden teacher and by the books, and I'm reading and I'm learning and I'm taking part in every, extracurricular or Zoom that I can to try to learn more and grow more and make sure that I'm doing it, in a smart way as well, especially since I'm so new to it, and to psychedelics in general, for the first time in more years than I can count. But yeah, so I'm learning a lot and it's been incredible. It's not just incredible for what I'm seeing in my day-to-day life and my feelings and my mind work and my calm state, but also to just it's really exciting to get to learn and speak with people like you who can help and answer those, questions. Still checklists and still questions. And I'm like, what about this? What about this? But it's been really awesome. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate that. Who else would like to jump in and share kind of how the journey has been for them so far?
I'll offer just one of my little differences, Charity. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Um, so the voice inside my head got nicer. I think I shared once before that literally when I was talking to myself, and it's my voice, but it's like it said darling. And I was like, darling, I don't use the word darling, but that's how I addressed myself. And so I've recognized unfortunately, I used to be we were kind of just talking about it, but I was like, oh, you're a stupid bitch. And like, I can't believe that's how I used to talk to myself, but I did. And I would never talk to anybody else that way, but I was talking to myself and that's what it was on repeat over and over. Like, you're not good enough. You're not doing this right and all this stuff. But when I started microdosing, the voice in my head became a much nicer person. And I seen myself as a nicer person. And that's just who I believe I truly am, so I kind of started being nicer to myself, but didn't even realize like that it was even me. I was like, so whoever's in there is like being much nicer because I don't even use that word darling. But like that's just like one of the huge changes. And the other main thing is that I started challenging my definitions. Like I didn't even know that I had a definition about what happiness was, what success was, what, and so that got brought up and I was like, yeah, well, but then in all honesty, they were definitions that I had to find, but it was because of being exposed to everybody else's definitions or just societal norms or whatever. And I was like, no, that really, like, if when it came down to it, I was like, that really isn't what I believe. And so just being given the permission to question like what I truly did want out of my life and what I truly believed, and just like being given that permission was like kind of a huge awakener because like I was like, okay, I think that's kind kind of what society forms us to believe, but that's not at all what I believe. And that kind of changed things all around, because at first then it was like, wait, am I doing it wrong then because I'm not believing what everyone else believes? But it kind of made my life a little bit easier because I didn't feel like I was going against the grain. I felt like I was kind of freeing myself and letting myself be who I really wanted to be and do the things I really wanted to do, not just what I thought I was supposed to do. And so that those were two of the main things that I wanted to share.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. It's, you know, for those of you that know Nicole, she is one of the nicest, kindest humans on the planet. I've interacted with tens of thousands of people probably across my lifespan, just based off of various roles and things that I've had. And she is so kind. And so to hear, Nicole, the way that you talk to yourself now, which is reflective of the way that you would speak to other people before, it's just such a joy to hear that shift for you. And those definitions are so key because those definitions are the reference points for every decision that we make, every thought that we have. Every decision we make comes from a thought, and those thoughts are rooted in those definitions, the way we perceive ourselves, the way we perceive others and the world around us and situations. When some people say it feels like the world is against me, that's a big idea of the entirety of the world being against you as an individual. But we don't often stop to consider the phrases or the ideas that we are taking on ourselves. And so, Nicole, thank you so much for that reminder of how important those definitions are and what a role they play in how we define ourselves and our experiences, and ultimately determining what we want. So I won't go down that tangent yet, but I want to give opportunity. Who else would like to share how microdosing has been helpful to them or what changes they found with it?
Well, this has been a journey of sorts. And um, I went from a lot of um, external dialogue being the most important thing in my life to now the internal dialogue is what I'm listening to. I'm starting to finally hear, my voice, my own voice. And I have to say that it is because of, the mushrooms that have really helped me or the medicine, I should say, the medicine, because that's what it is. And I am now completely off of all of my pharmaceutical meds, with the exception of one, which, um, but that's been over a year, over a year's journey weaning myself off of all of those. But what I want to say is the negative self-talk is going down, and I would agree with Nicole. Um, I'm hearing that my inner child speaking now finally, and listening to what she has to say. She's not being ignored anymore, and the other voices that are present are more helpful and less hurtful. And so that's kind of what's really helped. And I am microdosing still once in the morning and once in the afternoon. So I'm very happy with the progress that I'm making, and making life decisions that no more fawning in my experience with codependency and stuff like that. So it's like now I'm doing anyway, it's hard to talk about, but anyway, I just wanted to say that. Thank you so much for
Thank you for sharing. It's been incredible to watch some of the life transitions that you have made. And so love hearing how you're being gentle with yourself now and really taking ownership of your life and your decisions and going after what you want. Um, that's ultimately what each of us get to decide, is how do we want to experience our time on this planet. And if we just trip into that default mode, trip and fall into it and stay in default mode, then we're not being intentional about the life that we have and the opportunity that we have on this planet. So, using psilocybin in a way that we're still showing up in everyday life. By microdosing allows us to have those things that transition over time. And healing is not something that just happens in a boom, poof, you're healed. There can certainly be immense amount of perspective and a jump start on healing that can happen in some of those situations. But ultimately, healing comes over time. Even individuals who share that they had one of those more macro experiences, whether it was with psilocybin or ibogaine or ayahuasca or something else along the way that impacted that serotonin system. What's gained in that is a new way of thinking, a new way of perceiving. And by microdosing after the fact and continuing that healing journey, we're able to continue to enhance that neuroplasticity and really build on those benefits. And for those that don't find that they need a macro experience, the microdosing does that in the exact same way across the same amount of time. It's not faster per se to do something big and then microdose, but for some individuals, that can be a jumpstart that is helpful to them. So ultimately, the way we perceive ourselves, the way we talk to ourselves, the way we interact on a daily basis is where that healing comes across time. So I don't see anyone else kind of raising their hand to jump in at this point. Anybody else want to share right now? Otherwise, I'll share a little bit about my own journey with microdosing. All right. Well, for me, when I first started, I had one experience with mushrooms in the past, and it was hey, here's some mushrooms. You want to try them? And so I thought, okay, people say that this is great and fun and wonderful. And I was at home and with my husband, and kids were asleep. And so it was the safest environment there was going to be to try it. And so ate some, nothing happened. We're just watching a movie. So of course I'm like, well, nothing happened. Eat some more. So I have no idea how much I took. I have no idea what strain of mushroom it was. I know nothing about any of it except that I ate mushrooms and then absolutely hated it. It was, as I described, Teletubby land. Our boys were small, and it was just rolling hills and Teletubbies. And all I could think was how I just wanted it to stop and not be there. Now, for some context, I had no expectation. This was not for therapy. This was not me trying to deal with something. It was not considered a therapeutic journey. It certainly was considered recreational and curiosity. And that was it. And my curiosity said, I don't like this. I will never do it again. And ended up, I think, just kind of sleeping on the bathroom floor because it was nice and cool, and tried to rid my body of it, and that didn't work. And I probably wasn't doing it right anyway, because you kind of just separate from the body to some degree. So regardless, one of those moments where I said to God, when this is over, as long as I get through this, I'll never do this again. To which I'm sure he got a massive chuckle, knowing that, here we are 20 years, 15 years down the road. And I'm like, everybody needs to take mushrooms. But that's where I think it's so helpful to talk about the education and the dose, because when we're doing something intentionally and purposefully, and we have some sort of guidance about what we're looking for and what dose is helpful and what strain of mushroom is helpful, that's where we get to have a completely different experience of something that is beneficial. So education is huge. With this announcement today about the FDA reclassification coming and more access to the serotonergic psychedelic substances, it's really exciting. But then there's also that hope of like, oh gosh, I hope they don't overregulate, because that's something that again, government and policy tends to do. And we're talking about nature. But one of the leading researchers that was present today at the executive signing, and I apologize for the sake of listeners at this point, I don't have her name right in front of me. I will get that posted at some point in the comments. But she herself mentioned that was not an advocate for psychedelics previously either. And 10 years ago, she would have said, no, this is not a therapeutic modality. As she put it, she thought it was just magical thinking. And now, though, being part of the research, her position on it has changed. And what she said is the importance is understanding how to use it appropriately. And for those of you that have talked to me for more than 30 seconds, and listened to any of our groups in the past or gone to any of my lectures, that is always what I discuss. How are we using it appropriately? We're talking about nature. We're natural beings. It makes sense that nature has what we need. We just need to know how to use it appropriately. And I don't want to put the word appropriately in a tight, rigid box, because there's some fluidity to the definition of what's appropriate. But for the sake of conversation today, what we're talking about is using small doses where you are still completely functional in your everyday life. You're driving a car, going to work, taking care of friends, family, pets, responsibilities, whatever that daily life looks like for you, you are enhanced in that, like we talked about earlier, what's going on in the brain, but you're not altered. You are fully conscious, making your own choices, being intentional about your life, and that's the delineating factor between enhanced and altered. That's what we're looking for, is this enhancement of our experience on this planet and the life that we're living. So when as a clinic, we were looking at, what is the psychedelic research showing? And this was 5 to 7 years ago. I've been a licensed therapist for a while, been working with clients. We established Colorado Teletherapy Services back in 2017. And it was just evident that everything we've had was not working. Talk therapy is just talking. It's not that there's not benefit to it, but you have to structurally change the brain, because just like we talked about before, the brain in its efficiency gets into thought loops. And that's how it perceives the world. Everything filters through our default mode network. There's nothing really new happening in it at this point in time. All the newness was when we were a cute little baby, and a toddler, and learning and understanding the world. And we had all the thousands of questions of, why is the sky blue? And, why do people act like this? And why does my finger look this way? And how does a fingernail grow back? All those fun questions that come from children that are just inquisitive and wanting to understand. And we tend to lose a lot of that curiosity as we go through life, because we fall into the expectations of society. Just like some of you have shared within group this morning, we fall into those ideas and those definitions and the cultural expectations of, this is what you're supposed to do. This is how you're supposed to look. This is how you're supposed to interact. This is a title you're supposed to attain, or a level of education. And we put priorities on those things because is what has been inherited. And some of it's DNA inherited, and some of it is home of origin inherited, and the rest of it is education system, political, religious, cultural systems that we inherit that from. And so we take all this information and we determine things about ourselves based off of that information, and then we go with it. And that's our golden scroll, so to speak, that we measure everything against, until we pause and look at our life and say, gosh, this really isn't working for me. I've done all the things, I've checked all the boxes, and I'm miserable, or I'm frustrated, or I don't have the things that I was told I was going to have. I was told I was going to have a relationship that looked a certain way. I was told that I was going to have income, or a house, or cars, or other things that looked a certain way. My mental health would be a certain way because I did all these things, and then it's not. And so we're left feeling frustrated, wondering why, if the system is so key and so important, why it's not working for us. And the secret is, it's actually not working for anybody. It's only working for the system itself. The system perpetuates the system. And the goal is not to say, okay, we need to just throw the system away and go live on remote islands. Sometimes separating ourselves from the system can be really helpful. But the goal is what we choose and how we show up now as individuals. Understanding that the system is feeding the system, not the individuals. How do we as individuals then live within the system as long as we're on this planet? That's what microdosing allows your brain to think differently about, because it gives you the autonomy to decide that for yourself. And you can still be in the military, you can still have a government job, you can still be a nomad, you can still, live the life that you want, make the choices that you want. It's not about a full separation. It is from the system. It's a separation of how you identify the system and how you identify your own role within it. So what you want for your life is handed to you, until we choose to stop and reset that and be intentional and think differently about those wants that we have. And that all starts with cognitive flexibility. Cognitive flexibility is the ability to be flexible in how we think, not be stuck in rigid thought, not be stuck in those pathways that have been handed to us and ingrained over years and years and decades of life, but to actually give ourselves permission to think differently and to question things for ourselves. Is this what I really want? And if it is, why do I want it? Do I want it because I'm afraid that if I don't have it, then that devalues me? Or do I want it because it's what I've decided works for me and it's the direction I want to go for my life? When we make decisions based out of fear, we never make clear decisions because the brain isn't clear when we're in fear. When we're in fear, there's a ton of blood flow to the amygdala. Default mode network is like going 900 miles an hour. There's minimal executive functioning. Everything is just bouncing all over the place, also known sometimes as perimenopause or menopause for the women on here. That's starting to sound a little familiar. But that idea of emotional responses is not where we get clear thinking. And that's why we get frustrated as individuals when we're in that place. Because we're like, why am I doing this? I am an intelligent human. I know better. I can see that this is not going to lead me to what I want. Why am I responding this way? And it's because the brain is patterned. It's going to go in the patterns and the cycles that it always has until we structurally change the brain. That's what psilocybin does. Psilocybin changes the structure of the brain so we can think and respond differently. And that neuroplasticity is where we get that cognitive flexibility. Reducing blood flow to the amygdala means we're not responding so emotionally. Quieting down the default mode network means we get to reset and have a new way of thinking. And that's measurable on an MRI, friends. That's not just me polling the 1,000+ people that I worked with and saying, how's your default thinking? That is measurable on an MRI, that the default mode network, our default way of assessing ourselves and experiences and the emotions connected to it and what those definitions are, quiets down, and over time it resets. And that's where microdosing is so powerful. Over time, you get this reset in the full way that you think and perceive things. There's a ton of these serotonin receptors in the hippocampus, and that's connected to the amygdala. So hippocampus is about memory and neuroplasticity, but the amygdala and the hippocampus connect to each other. The amygdala says, I feel, and the hippocampus says, therefore. This is what it means. It connects the meaning to the feeling. So when we talk about something like trauma, there are triggers that are emotional responses, emotions that come up, and the hippocampus says, oh, I know what that means. We need to self-protect because when I feel that feeling, that's dangerous. That's scary. That's threatening. And so we're going to respond in that way. And those are some of those moments that as we move into our later adulthood, past the traumatic experience, we see that. We're like, why? Every single time this happens, do I respond the same way? Why do I continue to push people away? Why do I look for yellow and red flags in relationships and decide that I'm just going to, kill this relationship off ahead of time? Not the person, obviously, just the idea of the relationship, but, in this now so nobody can hurt me. Why do I keep doing that? It's not getting me what I want. It's not leading me to healthier relationships because I'm self-sabotaging. Why is it that every time I look in the mirror, I'm just uncomfortable with myself and I don't like what I see? And there's nothing wrong with what I see. Other people tell me that I'm beautiful and I'm amazing and incredible and have all these great qualities. And I look in the mirror and I see mud. Why is that? I don't want to believe that. Why is it that I go to work every day and I tell myself I'm built for more and I'm capable of more, but I never risk going for a promotion? I never have the hard conversation with the boss. I never really go apply for anything different, never go start my own thing because I'm so afraid of being rejected or of not being chosen. So instead, I just stay where I am and make myself feel small. All of those things are self-sabotaging. And for those of you listening, you have your own messages that are in your mind about how you view yourself or aspects of your life and where you're holding yourself back and making yourself feel small or less than out of fear. And it doesn't mean you're broken, and it doesn't mean you're stupid, and it doesn't mean you're emotionally incompetent. It means your brain is patterned, and that is the human condition. So when I first started microdosing, I just wanted to understand it. I didn't have a diagnosis. I wasn't on any medications. It just was, I'm a scientist, I'm a clinician, I've read the research, I want to understand this. And so my short description is microdosing helped me go from being a very pointy, sharp type A person who my coping mechanism was control. If I can control everything or have the idea of control, then everything will be okay. And now I'm a nice, soft, curly Q type A person. So I'll let you use that visual as a description. Microdosing doesn't change who you are, but it changes how you show up. You get to be more intentional in what you choose. I don't have to have everything in a way that I set up and align now, and I don't need everybody to agree with me. If you don't agree with things I say, that's completely fine. Doesn't hurt my feelings. It doesn't make me think anything less about what I'm saying, because if I'm saying something, it's coming from a place of knowledge and understanding and belief. But anything that you say is coming from your place of knowledge and understanding and belief. So it's not about who's right and who's wrong. It's what does each person want for their life? I know what I want for my life, and I move in that direction. And so everything that I do is referenced against, is this moving me in the direction that I want for my life? If someone else doesn't agree with me, it just means they want something different. And that's okay. We can want different things, and we can even want similar things and have different ways of getting there. That's the beauty of being an individual. It's not worth arguing over things that don't really matter at the end of the day. And that has become one of the questions I use on a regular basis. What's at the end of this? What's at the end of me proving I'm right about something? What's at the end of me, theoretically winning whatever argument I might be in at any point in time? What's at the end of me putting my 2 cents in or throwing an opinion out there? Is it because it just makes me feel smart about myself to have an opinion, or is it something that might actually be helpful to somebody? So, again, when we go back to that nice, soft, curly Q type A, I'm still somebody that's okay with being in charge and taking responsibility for things and running things and having big oversight. That's the way I perceive things, as in big picture. But I want people to feel like they can be themselves in my presence. You have an idea? Great, let's talk about it. Just because I didn't see it that way probably means because I think very linear and you think very creative. And so let's go creative this time. I always say I'll write you a research paper before I'll ever draw you a picture. That's just not how my brain works. But I appreciate people that draw pictures and that offer other things. And if collectively as a society and local communities, we can start to see each other in those ways, of having different strengths and different ideas and different ways of perceiving, there's just so much more peace and harmony in that. And I am not a believer in utopia. It doesn't exist. It is human beings on this planet, and we all carry scars. We all carry belief systems and ideas, things that have happened to us, things that we've been taught, things that we hold on really tightly to. But when you introduce cognitive flexibility and letting the brain be more flexible in the way it perceives things, we get a chance to experience things in a different way. And that's the freedom. And just because you choose that freedom for yourself doesn't mean that someone else will. And that's okay. That's their choice. But sharing our experiences, coming together in groups like this, talking about how we notice things differently when the brain quiets down and when we, enhance that neuroplasticity and we're gentler to ourselves, we are automatically gentler to others. It is impossible to say, oh, I only judge myself, I don't judge anybody else. Well, what's your reference point? Your reference point is other people. You cannot only judge yourself without judging other people because you have to have something to reference. So all of us are walking around with masks. All of us are walking around with a certain level of judgment because that's how we measure ourselves. And what psilocybin does is it quiets down that idea of the self-importance. That's a big part of that default mode network. That idea of how important am I versus what is the experience that I'm in with other people. When you can have a conversation with someone else and you're not sitting there thinking, what are they thinking about me during this conversation? You'll know that your default mode network is a little bit quieter. You'll know that that flexibility is being introduced. So thanks for letting me share a little bit of my own microdosing journey. But I think, it's helpful when we talk about it because this is not oh, I just started using mushrooms and now I live in utopia. That's an unrealistic expectation. The expectation is I get to think differently. I get to show up differently. And sometimes that's incredibly uncomfortable. Sometimes that is challenging to relationships. It's challenging to beliefs that we've held on to really tightly. And those things are uncomfortable to walk through. But there is a freedom on the other side of that and an enlightenment that I mean, and really a physical and mental enlightenment when you drop and shed some of those things that we've held onto so tightly because we realize that that's kept us in a box of ideas, a self-protective space that separates us from others. Relaxation on those ideas is what allows for that freedom. So the cool thing too with microdosing is over time, you need less, not more. Psilocybin microdosing is a healing modality. If we're structurally changing the brain, then there's going to come a time that you don't need to keep structurally changing the brain. And again, it's not when your IQ is a certain number or you consider yourself being, enlightened to a certain state. You just know. Your brain will let you know. I think I'm good. We'll skip a day. We'll use less. It will come to you over time because one of the biggest pieces of psilocybin microdosing is learning to trust yourself. That's chapter 1 in my book of the 6-week microdosing manual, Grow Your Own Thoughts, Microdosing with Purpose. Learn to trust yourself. You don't need a white lab coat to tell you it's okay. You don't need someone with a bunch of alphabet soup and credentials to tell you it's okay. Listen to yourself. This is nature. Start small, go slow, pay attention to what you're noticing. Your brain will tell you what it needs. Coming to groups like this and our other online groups that we have through Grow Your Own Thoughts, talking to other people that are also microdosing, journaling, writing things down as they come up for you, however you choose to reflect on those things. Be intentional and conscious about what you're noticing because that's where that healing comes. When you're having a conversation with yourself and all of a sudden you call yourself darling instead of stupid, that's noteworthy. That's incredible. That's a gentleness in the way you're responding to yourself. Share that. I love that you guys come to group when we talk about these things. And for those of you that don't want to share, that's okay. You're coming and you're taking away from the group what is helpful to you. We're just glad that you're here to hear and to add to the experience this morning. But be aware, be intentional. Don't live in default blinder or self-protective mode.
Yeah, I think what you said is really, really profound because that has been the shift from being externally, so self-conscious about what others think of me. Now it's the shift has become more internal. And I have had that experience as well where I was like, okay, I could probably skip a day today. I notice that I microdose more often when I have to deal with people because because that all those voices whatever that are telling me things from that I've internalized, but it's like it's helpful, it's that's the helpful part of the medicine is I'm taking care of myself, I'm doing self-care, and that's kind of the what I gather from the literature and from attending these group, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. and recognizing that you talk to yourself differently, and you recognize even when other people are saying things that in the past would have made us pause and, oh, wow, there's something wrong with me. You're right. I shouldn't have said that, or I shouldn't have thought that, or I should be more like that other person. When all that starts to quiet down, that's when you're realizing, oh, wow, these neural pathways are changing. You understand how it's helpful to you.
And what you said about that there's a line from a song that says that very thing, and it's been playing in my playlist. You're right from your side and I'm right from mine. It's like, it's okay that we don't have to agree, and we can agree to disagree if we have different. But I used to get so worked up about that because I wanted that sense of agreement. I wanted that attention. And I know that has a lot to do with coming up in a big family, but it's like recognizing that I don't have to do that anymore. I'm giving myself the attention that I am needing. My loving parent is giving the attention, anyway, you get the idea.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. Yes, absolutely.
I think
I
I'm being
think,
a little shy. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Kim.
Kim, go ahead.
I was just being a little shy today, but when she mentioned about talking to yourself nicer, I was doing a chore. I feed some kitties around my way. And I was getting too jostled up in my head. All the cats are coming at me. I'm like, who do I feed first? And something stopped me, and it didn't call me darling. It said, take your time, precious, or something. Like it was something really nice. And I noticed it when she said that. It kind of blew me away because I have noticed that too. And I can discern also between my higher self and my ego better with the mushrooms.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to shout that out.
Yeah, expand on that real quick, Kim. That because the ego is just the idea of the self. So when you say
Yeah.
discerning between the higher self and your ego, tell us more about that.
Yeah. Okay. So the ego for me is that one, the reactive one, where the one that has to be right all the time, the one that's um, judgmental, reactive, the one that loop-de-loops,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's like the higher self. For some reason, the mushrooms will help you see that, and it's like the higher self will step in and say, "You're looping. Pull yourself back in presence." That voice of the higher self or whatever, I can hear it better
That's
with
awesome.
with microdosing. Yes.
Yes.
And like you catch yourself where before I would just go off on a tangent and be in my freaking head all day long.
Mm-hmm.
Literally just thoughts all day long. I was living in thought, and I've noticed that with microdosing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing that.
You're
Nicole.
welcome.
I was just gonna add on to my thing that my relationships with others have improved because I know I've shared before about the situation that I was having in my marriage, and I set myself, so my ego was so important that I seen myself as being the cause of my husband's depression, right? And so um, and I don't know, like, I don't know the correct wording to it, but I finally got this realization that it is happening, right? Like it's happening. So it's validating that the actual, thing that's going on, but it's not because of me. And that kind of freed me because I set myself as the reason of this why and this why and this why. And really no one else was putting me in that position. I was putting myself in that position. And so I was like kind of drowning in it. And that was never the case. And it goes along with other relationships too, like with work relationships or just family or anything like that. But I had such a like view of myself, that I was the cause of why all this stuff that was all happening to me, like because of me, like. And so I don't really know how to word it except for that. With the continual use, it's been over 2 years now that I've taken the medicine, that I realized like it kind of knocks you off your high horse. Like, whoa, 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 like that's their life, that's their life. They're going through their own stuff. It has more to do with what's going on with them, and how what you're perceiving is has to do with what's going on with you. But I mean, just my husband and I have been together for 24 years, and I was really struggling with this, really, really. And then when I made that realization, it's like, yeah, we're next to each other, experiencing life and experiencing this marriage together, but we're two totally separate people. We're not the same. We've, like, I have experienced deep depression before, but his depression is not the same as my depression. And so it was kind of like a huge eye opener for relationships, and it bettered relationships, right? Because now I'm free to experience my own stuff, and he's free to experience his own stuff. And so that made a huge difference. And I like kind of told him one day, and I was like, because I had done a little bit larger of a dose of mushrooms out in nature and stuff, and I was like, oh no, and then I was like, okay, but don't get too caught up in the way, because you didn't know better before. Like, I needed to learn. And so I just apologized, and I said, I've been making it harder on you. Like, you're going through this, and I've been making it harder because I've been making it like something about me, like making his depression about me. And so I apologized, and I was just like, what did I say? Okay, that I had been making it harder. And then I think I tried to make, but so then that's the thing, is that I like to talk, right? And I like to talk, and he's not a talker. And so I was like, here, you're doing it again, like, because you want to show him that you finally understand now, and you want him to, and I was like, no, that's you. So like, it lets other people be themselves too, right? From my point of view, because I never had control in the first place, but I was trying to take that control. Like, if it, yeah, like, I don't know, but I don't know how to explain it, besides just that it's such freeing for myself, and for how I show up for other people, and how I let them be them. Like, like I had this standard, and if it, like Charity said, it's like, everyone could just do, that's okay. So I was like, that's okay if you feel this way, and this is how I feel. But it's not so much important how I feel, like, because I don't need anybody else to understand what I feel anymore, as long as I know what's going on. Do you know what I mean? And before, I needed everyone else to understand my point of view and know this side, and like, maybe almost like playing the victim. And I don't need to do that anymore. I just need to just be. That's it. And so, yeah, okay. I know that sounds like a big jumble mess, but to me it makes sense.
Nope, it all makes sense. I see lots of nodding heads on the screens.
Yeah,
So,
I totally get it. Oh, this is off topic, but your dog is so cute. And that hat, where did you get that hat? The little mushroom hat,
Someone
Nicole?
made it for me. Someone made it for
Someone,
me. At one
I
of, yeah.
kind of thought somebody handmade that. That is adorable. I know that's off topic, but yeah, he's
all right. Isn't it funny how sometimes when we believe that we are thinking so little of ourselves, that we are actually putting ourselves in a place of having a lot more power and importance than what we even realize. And Nicole, that's what I heard you saying, that so often there's those self-limiting beliefs of, I'm crappy and I'm dumb and I'm not worthy and then we think I'm contributing to the negativity in this relationship. And what we're doing is we are putting an enormous amount of self-importance on the forefront. The idea that you as one person, or any of us as one person, are the sole cause of significant depression in another person is just kind of silly. And it's not silly, funny, ha ha. It's just kind of like, why the heck would we think that we're that incredible? That I, as one human being, can impact another human being in the way that they can go into a severe depressive state and have negative thought loops in whatever that is. But that's so often what we do in relationships, and that's what I mean by how we reflect and measure ourselves against other people. Is we're using those other people as a reference point in how we identify about ourselves. So if we say hello to somebody and they just look away, then our first human thought oftentimes is, oh, I must be annoying them. Instead of just, there's something in their day that's about them. But then we do it on the other side too. And so often we're quick to take the positive side. somebody says, oh, you're so beautiful, or you're so handsome, you're so smart. And we're like, oh, tell me more, fanning ourselves and patting on the back. And then when somebody says, you're so dumb, that's a stupid idea, then we do the same thing, just on the opposite polarity. And we are like, yeah, you're right, I am stupid. That is a dumb idea. What if instead we exist more in a neutral space? It's nice to hear nice things when people compliment, but if we take that on, then we have to take the other on also. And instead, it's great. If somebody says, "Oh, you're so smart," hopefully that means that whatever I said connected and meant something to them. And then somebody's, to someone else can say, "Oh, you're so incredible. That was great." Great. Hopefully you took something away that's helpful. But then when somebody says, "Oh, you're so stupid. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard," it's like, well, we'll just agree to disagree. I wouldn't say it if I thought it was dumb and stupid. Right? So think about those things as we're interacting with other people, the way that we respond, the way that we want to respond, that default way of responding lets us know kind of where we're at. When we're in a relationship with a significant other and they're not responding to us in the way that either they typically do or we think that they should, right? Oh, you haven't told me I'm beautiful today? Come on, we've only been married 30 years. We know this is a daily thing. What happened? You in a bad mood? Did I do something? Was dinner not right? Right? We start going down these weird rabbit holes instead of it just being, you don't need that. Just be. I love what Nicole said about being two individuals sharing the relationship. The relationship can often take on its own identity. And that's why as a therapist in our clinic, when we're working with couples who are going through things, we also require that they individually see the same therapist for at least a couple individual sessions. Because if you only ever see somebody in the context of a relationship, you're only seeing one aspect. A relationship is made up of two people at a minimum. If we're talking a family structure, then you've got multiples. But I always say it's two healthy individuals that make a healthy relationship. So for individuals to say, let's go to couples therapy and fix the relationship, friends, that starts at the individual level. And then you understand the dynamics of the relationship. What are the intentions and expectations that are existing within the context of this relationship that's creating the issues? And that can be with parents, with siblings, with coworkers, with significant others, with other people driving down the interstate. If the expectation is you're going to use your blinker to let me know that you want over, and then you don't do that and you just swerve over, well, you've broken the social norm law of letting me know you're coming over, and now I'm mad, and we call that, now you just cut me off, right? Whereas if they put the blinker on and then come, you're like, okay, well, thank you for giving me the anticipation that you're coming over into this lane. But we determine that there's a different response to it. The outcome is the same. Now there's another car in front of us. But how they go about it, we put so much idea to that we make it about us. Oh, you didn't use your blinker? I'm going to flip you off and ride your bumper and honk at you and flash my lights and tell you how annoyed I am that you did not meet the expectation. And we do the same thing in our interpersonal relationships. I'm going to give you the silent treatment and not pay attention to you and, lay on my side of the bed or not call you back or respond with an emoji that just gives you a thumbs up instead of some meaningful statement or whatever we do to let the other person know I'm annoyed and I'm not happy with where things are in this relationship. But if we will let go of that, all of that idea of needing to feel so important and so seen and so valued and just be, your value is already there. Your purpose is fulfilled. You don't need to keep chasing all the ideas and the things that society has said we're supposed to be pursuing. Just be. You're here. Welcome. Join the party.
Yeah, you're talking about like intrinsic value, and that is a huge shift of seeing your own value, and that it's not what you do, it's not who you know what I mean. It's like there's these external things, and that maybe that was the drive for many years. I know in my case it was. What I do is who I am. My identity was my job, was my how I showed up in my family, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is is the intrinsic value. Like you said, you have, this internal. I don't know. I don't know. You have the words, but anyway, thank you for emphasizing that. That's what I've been studying.
Yeah, your value is there. It doesn't need to be earned.
I think she was trying to say you have this internal dialogue. I think that's what she meant.
Mhm. No, the internal dialogue is something that reflects the messaging of what we determine our value is. But my point is that the value is there. You don't need to earn it. You don't need to pursue it. You don't need to achieve it.
Right.
You don't need to accomplish it. You don't need to, put some alphabet soup after your name or anything like that. You are a human on this planet. Your value is there, and it's equal to every other human on the planet.
Yeah, but I thought maybe I heard wrong. I thought the girl that was just talking when she ended, I'm wondering if she meant you have an internal dialogue because
No,
she said
that's
I don't
not.
hear you.
No, that's
Is
not
that
what I meant.
okay?
That
Okay.
there's an intrinsic value, and it's very new. This topic is very new to me, and that's why I was trying to let Charity explain it, because she's got the knowledge base. But this is what I'm trying to understand about this shift, is that I'm not who I'm not who I'm not what I do. In other words,
Right.
my value doesn't come from the fact that I am a manager, or I'm a this, or I'm a that. My value is inside. So I'm not seeking external validation anymore
Okay.
for those things. I'm
Yeah.
starting to recognize that I have intrinsic value, which is
Yeah.
somebody Charity, explain it. I can't.
No, you did a
We are
great job.
transcendental beings. We are not the titles. We're not mother, father, sister, brother. Those are just things that we do. That's not who and what we are. But we are actually transcendental beings. That's my belief. Anyway. Okay, I'll
That
shut up now.
no, that is definitely, there can be different words to get to the same idea.
Yeah.
So, no, well, for the sake of time today, we're at the hour. I want to honor everybody's time. I appreciate everybody being on here. Thank you so much for the great conversation, and for sharing your stories and your journeys and the things that you're learning and how we're growing together. Before I stop the recording, I do want to ask if anybody came to group today with questions specific to finding their dose, or anything specific with kind of those administrative aspects of microdosing, with microdosing, sorry.
No, but I sometimes just have a hard time finding where to end or like where to leave when I'm on the Zoom. So if I hang out for a little bit, I'm trying to find my way out.
Okay.
So
Well,
just to let you
I'll,
know.
I'll I'll shuffle you out at the end when we're all done.
Oh,
All
okay.
right.
All right. Bye-bye.
Um,
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
Question that
Okay.
might be beneficial.
Yep. Go ahead, Nicole.
Um, for someone that is on SSRIs or taking SSRIs and has recently increased, what do we do with the microdosing part of it? Should that also increase? So maybe if you can throw anything about that out.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're currently on a medication and you're still trying to get some of the benefits from the medication, potentially increasing that dose, just pay attention. Listen to your body, see what you're noticing with your microdosing. Because SSRIs work specifically in the serotonin system, just like psilocybin does, they do different things. They attach to different receptors. They work in different ways. So you may find that you want to increase your microdose to override that. The goal would be that you're able to then reduce down that dose of the SSRI as you get to more of that healing place of what you're trying to accomplish by having increased it. So that was kind of, I think, a circular way of answering that. But if you've increased medication, SSRI specific, you may find that you do need to increase your dose a little bit to help offset some of those other things. You definitely want to pay attention when you start titrating. Sometimes individuals find that increasing the microdose a little bit helps with that titration process too, because again, we're bridging that serotonin deficiency gap. So
Okay. Okay, because the main goal, like it's Lloyd, my husband, and he knows that I, share about this, and so he actually it got so uncomfortable that he went up, but he does not want to be on the SSRI. So eventually, that's long-term goal, and he definitely does not want to feel not feel, I guess is what I'm saying. So doesn't want to walk around like a zombie and stuff, but it just got to the point where he needed that, and I shared that, like for a certain amount of time that if that's needed, then that's just needed, and that's okay too. But he just doesn't want to go back on all the work that he's been doing already over the last year. And so I guess we just needed a little bit of direction on, because he definitely doesn't want to stop microdosing. He sees the benefits and feels it, and I think we both know that that's the answer in the end game, over the SSRIs, but it got too uncomfortable where like daily life wasn't moving along, and so he needed that extra help right now.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And like we've talked about, microdosing itself adds a level of discomfort in certain aspects. And so that is part of the journey of healing, is going through the uncomfortable part. Just like you break our arm and have surgery and you have a cast, and after the cast, I mean, that's uncomfortable, but physical therapy is even more uncomfortable. That's that functional healing aspect after a physical injury. So with microdosing, that physical therapy part is the coming to groups. It's doing the personal individual work. It's going through the discomfort of really being honest with ourselves about how we've been showing up, and the thought loops that we've allowed ourselves to be stuck in, and the things that we've allowed into our lives as coping mechanisms, in order to cope with some of those things and to distract from them, because that's really that whole piece, is distraction. So in seeking a reprieve from our thoughts, we introduce self-sabotaging things to our lives. And there's a multitude of different ways that that can be done. But when we see that, that can be really hard to face. And it can be hard to go through that and to notice that those are choices, and choices that we've made. So I look at everything as a clinician from harm reduction. What is less harmful? Increasing an SSRI is less harmful than living in a suicidal way of thinking. So, or a major depressive way of thinking. So make those decisions for each person and what needs to be done, but being willing to go through that painful part, increasing the microdose to offset what's going to happen with some of that increasing the SSRIs, titrating those meds down when he is ready, or individuals listening when they're ready. Those are all personal decisions. But you're not going to go from, I'm taking 300 milligrams of psilocybin to now I'm taking 400 milligrams of psilocybin and start seeing the walls move and, the colors be brighter and all of that. Microdosing is about finding that functional dose that you are absolutely perceiving benefit. It is not subperceptual. For those of you that are new within group today, you should absolutely be perceiving changes, just like the ones you've heard everyone talk about, but it is subhallucinogenic. You should not be having hallucinogenic responses. So if you're seeing hallucination aspects, you're not microdosing. But if you're not noticing anything, you need to increase the dose. So it's very individualized. That's where these groups and all of the educational materials and the access to our team is helpful. But yes, make it an individualized journey and use it in a way that is helpful and appropriate. All right, at this time, we're going to go ahead and stop the recording. If any of you have personal questions you want to stay on after group, I'll stay on for a little bit. For those of you that are listening, we'd love to have you join in our groups that are live. You can go to growyourownthoughts.org. Dates, times, and Zoom links are found on our calendar.